that wasn't all that's, been taking place surrounding OTAs, man, surrounding the black and gold. We are still on quarterback watch. We're still waiting, hoping and waiting on my man, Aaron Rodgers, Aaron. Now, we've had multiple players been asked about him, talked about him. I think most recently, Patrick Queen. He was the one I saw yesterday do an interview and basically was like, he's completely happy with the quarterbacks that they currently have on the roster in terms of Mason Rudolph, Will Howard, Skylar Thompson. But he also said, the childhood fan that I'm growing up was an Aaron Rodgers guy. You feel me? So, of course, you can see the smile pop up on his face. And I was like, yo, shout out to the media savvy right there. I see you, PQ. PQ say, yo, this not my first rodeo. I know how to talk to the media, baby. So let me talk to them in a nice way to let them know I got confidence in the gang. But we not tripping. I said, yo, shout out, man. Shout out. Like I said, Patrick Queen gave us that energy. We obviously know when Cam was asked about him, man, we've seen Cam talk about him multiple times throughout the offseason. And it was kind of, back and forth about, he wants him, but he doesn't like this vibe of how we're kind of being, strung along and kind of waiting on it. I get that vibe from Killer Cam, man. Shout out to the captain. But when you the captain, and especially me knowing how Cam is, man, that's just him through and through. And that's why we respect him as the leader, because it's like, man, regardless of how it makes you feel per se, he understands what the message needs to be. And I thought he was clear on that thing, man. Look, we still want you, but you need to make your mind up, bro. Because right now, this whole playing back and forth, you halfway in, halfway out, that's not going to cut it. But that wasn't the only one. All right, so shout out. Okay? Shout out. Because good old four-time Super Bowl champion Terry Bradshaw has something to say. All right. Shout out to the champion. All right. Shout out to the champion. Oh, shout out to Let's Go UW, man. He's following up, man. He already knows what we on. He says, yo, and shout out for the super chat. He says, Terry Bradshaw preaching the truth. We don't need or want the diva Aaron Rodgers. All right. So for those of you that don't know, what had happened was this, man. Shout out to Terry Bradshaw, a.k.a. the original TB12. All right. But he was doing a interview with, let me pull up directly. It was a radio station, 103.7 The Buzz. Morning Mayhem. Shout out to Morning Mayhem, baby. All right. But ultimately, man, he was asked about the quarterback situation, man. Talked a little bit about Kenny Pickett, man. He talked about how he actually liked Kenny Pickett, and he felt that the organization failed Kenny specifically in terms of not building around him offensive line, weapons, and then moving on from him as fast as they did. But from there, that kind of, spun the conversation to where they currently are with Aaron Rodgers. And from there, he basically said that, and this is the quotes, "That's a joke. That to me is just a joke. What are you gonna do? Bring him in for 1 year? Are you kidding me? That guy needs to stay in California, go somewhere and chew on bark and whisper to the gods out there." My dog Terry said, "Yo, go chew on some bark." Go whisper to the gods out there, bro. Hey, in the words of Rod Dollar, peace and love to all the gods. All right, peace and love to the gods in the chat too, man. All right. My man, Terry, wow. Shout out to Terry Bradshaw, man. Shout out to TV12, man. All right, y'all go chew on some bark. Go whisper to them guys out there. Don't do that over here. Not in Pittsburgh, all right? Not in Pittsburgh. We don't do that in Pittsburgh, all right? We subtle here. We sane here. We don't do all that stuff, man. Jeez Louise. Shout out, man. Shout out. But as you can see, Rodgers not high up on Terry Bradshaw's Christmas list, all right? In terms of who he's going to give out cards to and stuff like that, man. It's like that sometimes. I can understand. But as a whole, man, when we're thinking about what Bradshaw was talking about specifically with Rodgers, part of that frustration to me is layered, right? When you're listening to Bradshaw speak on it, obviously when he talks about the specific Rodgers element, to me, it's hard to just focus exclusively on what's the plan, right? Are you just going to bring him in for 1 year? When we doing this? We can't go back in time and change how it ended with 7, whether you wanted to move on too soon, move on later. the Kenny Pickett scenario also, to me, that's one of those things where once the player gets frustrated, you're in this bad situation. And part of it was due to Kenny's production, or, the lack thereof, and how he voiced his displeasure behind the scenes with the organization following, obviously, the Seattle situation with Mason. But then more importantly, when you get to the offseason, when we bring in Russell Wilson. So, yes, we can say that they, didn't completely put every resource, every dollar that they could around him to make him have the best opportunity. But at the same time, part of me says if the production didn't warrant that, then it's hard to just keep pouring resources there if you don't feel like that's truly the answer. I don't know what they felt behind closed doors, but based off of how quickly they moved on from him, it seems as if they weren't convinced that he could do that once he got frustrated to the extent that he was. Because there have been players that have been frustrated behind closed doors that they haven't just traded away, a couple days later. But at the same time, there have been the other side of it. You just you kind of have to know who you are and where you are in there. But that's just, like I said, the one part of it. The other part is like, man, when we're talking about just the plan going forward as it pertains to, continuing to sit and wait for Rodgers. Yeah, we can do all right, man, I'm tired of waiting, turn my nose up at him, and that's fine. But does that make you a closer contender or not for 2025? And it really depends on how you look at this roster and how you look at Rodgers versus Mason Rudolph and Will Howard. There's optimism around those dudes, but in terms of what is proven and what isn't proven, I think that that's the big disconnect when we're talking amongst Steelers Nation and who we want to, rally behind and ultimately say, this is the quarterback that we want to endorse. This is the guy that we want to believe in. It's hard right now because of the lack of experience, the lack of long-term production, postseason production, and obviously when you're talking Rodgers, the Super Bowl ring, the MVPs, plural, all of those things make him a lot more appeasing, but we all know it's this that we're dealing with that makes it kind of, back and forth in terms of who wants him, who doesn't want him. I mean, we talk about how, like I said, man, with Patrick Queen, you see him light up about him. Cam, he was kind of, back and forth on him. You hear Bradshaw, how he talked about him, right? Even in the chat, we got some people that don't want Rodgers, like, move on. We don't want the diva. That's what they called him. And then you got my man right here in terms of Black and Yellow Texas Steel. Shout out to the super chat as well. He's strict. He's telling you off the gate, off the rip, I'll take Rodgers. And he's not the only one that feels like that, man. There are plenty of people that do feel like, regardless of how long we have to wait, as long as it doesn't impact the start of the season, man, we'll wait for Rodgers. There's people that were like, I'll wait it could be the night before week one. I'll wait on him. For others, they're like, nah, man, I ain't got time for all that, man. I need to know right now. I need to know ahead of time. And I think that, like I said, that's going to be that big challenge, man, going forward with, this group specifically. How do you build the roster up? How do you lean into certain schemes and certain concepts when you truly don't know who is going to be the guy driving the car? Who is going to be the leader of this group? Mason, to me, like I said, has some nice things that he brings to the table. I just need to see more than the 4-game sample size for me to completely fall in love with it and truly believe that, he's going to take us to where we need to be. Me personally, I see glimpses of it, but to me, the glimpses still give me more of your QB2. You can get us out of a bind on a, short, time frame, a week or two, but I don't know if I necessarily feel comfortable with you being the 17-game plus playoff starter just yet. Now, that could all change with new information. The same way prior to Mason coming in there versus Cincinnati and balling, throwing that slant to George Pickens, him taking his 70 yards, right? Prior to that happening, there wasn't this overwhelming support for Mason Rudolph and overwhelming confidence in Mason, but the new information allowed us that ability. That's all I'm looking for. I'm looking for new information, baby. All right. So if Mason, with the new stash, can give us that new information, then we can feel a lot more confident. And the same with Will Howard. Will Howard, you hear how he speaks, man. He's very confident, man. He understands the city. He's like, man, Big Ben, that's what the city needs, man. I want to be that next version. I want to be that gritty, tough quarterback, man, that produces, that wins this team, a ton of games. And on paper, he brings certain things to the table. but it still has to develop. It still has to show that it can come in here at this level and make some of those throws, make some of those reads. His escapability that we saw him have in the collegiate ranks will translate to this level. He can consistently do those things. Right now, it's all speculative. Right now, we're seeing some of the OTA stuff, but once again, it's shirts, shorts, controlled climate, man. You're not stressed. Nah. But that's the part to me that it's hard to feel overly confident with the group right now, just because there isn't a lot of proven out there right now. And that's why I think that the organization is still on the waiting thing for Rodgers, because what is your other option? Without the pride and ego part, if we take that away, because the pride and ego is instantly going to make us say, yo, I'm tired of waiting on you, Rodgers. But let's take that out of it. We're just simply saying best options for 2025. That's the part where he's still, to me, is going to be at the top of that list. And if he truly is, well, what is the difference then, when we're in the middle of the season, we're constantly signing guys from other teams, practice squads. We bring guys in for workouts. Oh, man, we want to make a trade for a guy. We're doing this because we're actively trying to improve our roster. So why should we just stop because we're tired of the waiting game for this particular player? Now, if we just say we're ready to just move on, I think that's different. But if we're going to move on, let's say we're moving on for a reason and we're going to actually invest in Mason. If that's the case, man, you already know the receivers I'm telling y'all to go get off the free agent heap. You already know. I'm like, yo, go get, I need multiples, right? But if we not, then it's like, yo, you got to wait then. And that's the sucky part about it. But that's the reflection of the organization. When we talk about why we have our grievances, what are some of the issues, that's where that comes in, because it's like, yo, we could have handled this better, man. We could have handled this way better. But unfortunately, we handled it the way that we did, and here we are. And that's why we still on the 28th of May. Still waiting to see if Rodgers is going to decide to show up on us or not. This is crazy. It is actually really crazy, man. We are really on the 28th day of May and still do not have an official answer as it pertains to Aaron Rodgers, man. But like I said, man, don't forget to hit the like button one time for the culture and subscribe if you are new to the channel.